on you?
I want to give up bingo. I'm much more interested in my stocks than I am. This is
You want
that
bingo?
damn bingo thing.
I'm just gonna ask you questions. It'll just be a conversation. Tell me what you wanted.
Sharon Harrison. Originally from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Let's see, I was born in Vancouver and went all my life in school to the convent of the Sacred Heart. It was like a castle, and we used to have to speak French at lunch every day. Oh, and I spoke Spanish because my father had sent us to learn when we were young, so I spoke some French and Spanish. My father was the Spanish consul in Vancouver, so he was from Spain, Malaga. And my mother, she was a Canadian Irish, and there were 6 children. I was the eldest and always to blame. That's how I used to put it to everybody. I studied Latin and science and physics, and I did take typing too, thank God, because it helped me when I became a journalist. And I graduated in 1956 and went on to University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And I also worked at my father's hotel all during university to pay my way through. The hotel had a wonderful car that they sent out to pick up Queen Elizabeth. My father became the chauffeur. He was really he owned the hotel, but anyhow, he went and picked her up and took her to the wonderful Hotel Vancouver that was for royalty. I went to Europe, saw a few countries. I was there for 3 months, and then I came back and I went to the Vancouver Sun, which was the major newspaper, and I progressed there. I was one of the first women to come down to the news desk, because in that day they had mostly men, and I was about the 3rd woman that came down to the news desk. In seniority, I came in line to be the next reporter to come down to city desk. So they brought me down, and they tried to get rid of me by putting me on nights and sending me to the police station. And so the night editor had mercy on me, and he said, you shouldn't be down at Skid Row at the police station every night. So every night he would phone the head of the station, and they'd have a policeman and a dog come out and meet me in the parking lot, because it was Skid Row, which was, Vancouver's a really big city and on the ocean. And so people were scared for me that I wouldn't last, but I did. And then later I married another reporter, and they got me again. They said, you can't be in the news desk anymore. You have to go up and be fashion editor. So I spent 5 years, and I had my first baby born there. I had the baby with my boots on. From my snow boots. I think I was walking in snow in January. And this day I was up the mountain, and I'm about 9 months filming some models on the chairlift with a St. Bernard dog. And I'm trudging through 3 feet of snow, and it was hilarious. I'm carrying my belly, but I had only gained 11 pounds because I put myself on a really strict diet. And I had a cake that nobody knew I was pregnant, otherwise the management of the newspaper wouldn't let me work there. So anyhow, I got this big page. They used to have big fashion pages in the paper. Women's pages were 3 to 5 pages. So I had to put all these pictures together, so I had to get out of the hospital. And so many people came to see me, I got a little bit of a depression. But then I had to be back at work by the next Friday. I think I had her on a Sunday. And I had to write the cut lines for the pictures of the fashion models. And it had to go in that Saturday newspaper. Oh, that was one of the experiences of my life, I tell you.
What has been your greatest adventure?
I think all my travels have been an adventure. I think I've moved too many times. But I think Hawaii, my husband and I were going to go to Ottawa, but he changed his mind and decided he'd rather go to Hawaii. So when you're a journalist, you can sort of go where you want. I was terribly upset, but I went to Hawaii, and for 2 years we had a beautiful life. The wondrous music of the Hawaiians and their lilting dances. I was entranced by the culture of the Hawaiian people and their kindness to us. And you know, there were 5 different nationalities that lived there. And then I went to Guam, and it was like having a Spanish overtone to the Hawaiians. And we were assistants to the governor of Guam. I put on many parties for the governor's wife. There were visiting firemen like Teddy Kennedy came, and President Lyndon Johnson came, and Nguyen Cao Ki from Vietnam. It was during the Vietnamese War, so I did some volunteering there. I ran a beautification campaign for the whole island of Guam. Oh, and we had the president coming, and you know, the whole retinue, his retinue coming. In Guam, I used to go and I'd write letters for the boys in Vietnam. They had been badly burned and brought to the hospital in Guam, some of the worst cases. We would try and stay in touch with the families. So there was connection. There's a whole, I think it's called the USO, would keep in touch with the families of the vets that were injured. And it was so sad because they were so young. They used to take them very young. And I did that for 2 years. Robin learned how to count by counting the B-52 bombers that used to take off from our airport in Guam and fly to Vietnam and bomb. And then we would count the B-52 bombers coming home in the afternoon when she came home from her school. And then it'd be like 3 or 4 fewer planes. And that was a sort of a, when I thought of it later, I thought it was useful when you know, these big bombers flying along our cliff. We lived on a cliff overlooking the beach, flying along, and she could count them. And it was interesting to her. And my father was always a pilot, so I had a plane, just counting planes. But you know, it wasn't funny when you came back and there were fewer planes, because that meant those big bombers were shot down. Then from Guam, we went back to Canada. We had a house in Vancouver and a house we built in Penticton. And I brought the children up there, taught them to sail. And Robin had a pony. Pony used to let the other horses out. It was a devil. Little Shetland ponies can be really naughty. I wanted my children to be in nature. They went on hikes with their uncle, who had just come back from being up in France. And then we went to Mexico for a year for Tom to write a book called Their Man in the White.
Tom was your husband.
Tom Artie's, right. He was an author. I think I left my heart in Alamos, Sonora, Mexico. It was the most peaceful, most beautiful, most healthful town I've ever lived in. I had the baby born down in Mexico, and everybody every day used to ask me when I was going to have the baby, because that was the only game in town of any interest to people. I'd go to the cocktail parties, and for a month and a half I was late having her. There's so many stories in my life. It's really hard for me to remember them all, because it's just too much diversity for one person. And maybe that has left me a little askance, because when you travel that much and have to make new friends each time you move, it is a jarring, or it's sort of, I remember I used to be depressed a bit when I first got there, because I didn't know anybody in Guam, I remember, and yet all the governor's cabinet and stuff, they were very kind to us, but it was a jolt. I guess you call it a jolt to the body and the mind. So I had to get used to that, because it happened to me so many times, like 17 times I moved my home.
Wow.
That's a lot.
If you could tell yourself one thing when you were moving all the time, or when you were growing up, or when you were writing, what would that one thing be?
I always tried to turn it over and say, reach out and touch someone. That's my favorite mantra. Reach out and touch someone, to me, is empathetic. Like how you feel when you give somebody a gift. You just feel good inside when you see them opening the gift that you gave them. Well, that's how I've tried to adjust and keep on going and keep on learning until the day you die, because to me, learning and innovating, you know how I love Shark Tank, I love innovation. I want to discover something myself still, because my mind is still so young that I crave watching Shark Tank. I crave innovation, hearing about it. My most precious saying for today is, peace is the only way to win a war. That's what I go around telling everybody, and they laugh at it. Oh, because we have these volleyball tournaments, and so we're competing with each other. So I keep saying, peace is the only way you make. Because people won't start arguing about rules, conflicts. And I love my grandchildren and love to be with my daughter and grandchildren here now in my latter days. And I hope for many more. And I hope that they all succeed. I want to race for them. I want to help them.